Hey everybody, it's X, and welcome back to some more Magic Arena, and today we're going to be playing some Murders at Karlov Manor Sealed in the Qualifier Play-In Best of 1 event. For those who don't know, Qualifier Play-In events are open entry events. You have to spend 4,000 gems, 20,000 gold, or 20 play-in points, but anybody on Arena can enter these to try to get a chance at competing in the upcoming Qualifier Weekend, which is an invite-only event that you get to compete to try to get into an Arena Championship, which is like the big arena event with a bunch of cash prizes on the line. So super competitive event here. What I love about these qualifier play-in events is that they are the best way and the only way really to use all of your leftover play-in points that you get from hitting top 1500 mythic in previous months, or you can get some play-in points from winning best of 3 drafts. So I've got tons of extra play-in points here that I can use to enter some of these qualifier play-in events just to add some more gems to the collection. So that's my main goal today. We're just going to be juicing up the account, getting our stack of gems back up so we don't run out anytime soon. But if we do manage to make it to that 6-win run and get into the qualifier weekend event, then I'll be happy to make videos of that event as well. So really going to be happy with whatever happens here. I'm just cool with using these play-in points and getting some more useful gems, but I'll still try to play to the best of my ability and have some fun with some Murders at Karlov Manor Sealed in the meantime. Without further ado, let's bust open our packs and see what we get to play with today. Alright, well this is a pretty bad omen to start things off. If you haven't heard, draft boosters are no longer a thing. Now we are playing draft and sealed events with play boosters. Play boosters are much more similar to what set boosters used to be, where you can open up multiple rares in just one pack. So it's actually incredibly rare to get only 6 rares in your sealed pool now with the new play boosters. So that's not a good sign right off the bat. In fact, with the new play boosters, it's possible to open up 3 rares in just a single pack. So the average sealed pool, I think, sits around 8 to 10 rares now, somewhere in the middle there. Maybe like 9 is the exact average. So yeah, only 6 rares is a bit of a bummer, but the rares that we have are pretty good cards for the most part. I don't think Case of the Uneaten Feast really does anything, but Vannifar is an incredible mythic that can spit out any extra cards in your hand as face-down 2/2s and then start buffing your entire board. Phenomenal card there that makes sure you never run out of 2/2s to play. Any card you draw for your turn can be at least a 2/2 threat. There's an Axebane Ferox here as well, which is just an incredible stat line for the mana cost. Very self-explanatory card here. It's just beefy, it's hasty, it's death touchy, and it protects itself with that ward ability. And then we've got 3 rares in Rakdos, so that's pretty good for trying to dump a bunch of rares into just one deck. We've got a Case of the Stashed Skeleton, which has a really fun line of rules text. That's probably my favorite thing about the card. So you make a 2/1 skeleton and you suspect it. So that skeleton is a 2/1 with menace that can't block. And if that skeleton dies, this is my favorite line of text, to solve, you control no suspected skeletons. So if that skeleton dies, or if you unsuspect it, then you will solve the Case of the Stashed Skeleton, and now you have a demonic tutor. You can sacrifice the case to look for any card that you want from your library and put it into your hands. This is a really good card if you have some way to get rid of the skeleton or make it unsuspected anymore. Just make it a normal, everyday skeleton. We've got Blood Spatter Analysis, which is another very self-explanatory card. Tons of lines of text on this thing, but basically it's a removal spell and then it's graveyard recursion. Once 5 or more creatures have died throughout the game, you get to sack this, return a creature from your grave to hand. So excellent, excellent card. And then Incinerator of the Guilty, just a gigantic dragon that can also let us exile cards from our grave when we hit our opponents to try to wipe their whole board, which is completely busted. It does have to survive a turn cycle because it doesn't have haste, so it's not going to do its crazy ability till it deals combat damage to your opponent. But if they don't manage to kill it before it can get 1 attack in, it's gonna end the game one way or another, either by just jamming them in the face for 6 or by wiping their entire board with its collect evidence ability there. So really incredible rares for the most part. Even if we didn't get a lot of rares, The only one not really worth talking about is the Case of the Uneaten Feast here, sadly. So let's check out all of our individual cards, our individual colors and everything at common and uncommon. See where we have the most gas, because we actually have two different color pairs that I think would be great to build around. And obviously if we have a bunch of mana fixing, we could do a little bit of splashing. But ideally, there's not a lot of great fixing in this format, so I would like to try to be just two colors splashing in a third. So I'm not going to try to play like 4 of my rares and go green, blue, black, and red, but I might go green, blue, splash, red, green, blue, splash, black, black, red, splash, green, something like that. We'll see. So let's check out the fixing first. We do have Case of the Shattered Pact, which is colorless fixing. It grabs any basic land from our deck, puts it to our hand for 2 colorless mana, so pretty easy to cast that. There's also Escape Tunnel, the newer, cooler Terramorphic Expanse that grabs whatever basic we need. That is more colorless fixing, but that is it. So 2 pieces of colorless generic fixing. Not a big fan of the Case if you aren't going full 5 colors, because 2 mana just to get 1 basic at sorcery speed is pretty bad. Even at instant speed, if that's the only thing the card does, it's not great. Because there's a card I do like here, which is the Topiary Panther. This is 2 mana instant speed. Grab any basic from your deck, put it into your hand, and I think it's pretty good on Topiary Panther because you get to do that and then you have 6 mana value in your graveyard to collect evidence with later. With this Case, if you have no chance of ever solving the case, if you don't have all 5 colors of cards in your deck, it's just sorcery speed Topiary Panther, but worse, because you don't have any evidence in grave, so I'm not a massive fan of this, but I do like Escape Tunnel. That's just free fixing. So, yeah, not in love with our colorless mana fixing here, but we are somewhat likely to try to play green with this Vannifar, with this Ferox, and in green we do get a Topiary Panther in addition, but that looks like the only green mana fixing we have here. So again, not the most splashy sealed pool ever. We probably splash in maybe an Enlisted Worm in a green deck, throw in 1 Plains and have the land cycle or the Escape Tunnel and a Plains. That's 3 white sources right there. Or we splash in the Dragon. That needs like double red though. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see. Depends on our individual colors for sure. For our multicolored cards, we have a completely useless card, Stromkirk Captain. I don't know what that's doing on the list, but cool. I guess there's a vampire build-around on the list from the play boosters. That is not going to be helpful. Dogwalker. We've got 3 Dogwalkers. Might be slightly worth considering building some kind of weird Boros aggro deck, because this is great in draft when you can build around it with all the different ways to buff your entire board. So we might have some synergies for this thing to pop off. Enlisted Worm is just excellent value, so it is a tempting splash if we are like green-blue, splash in a tiny bit of white. That might be the easiest splash that we have. Crocodile, yeah, fits fine in green-blue. None of these seem like massive reasons to head into their color pair outside of Vannifar right now. Let's see what else we got. Blood Splatter Analysis, which is pretty great. Not quite as good as Vannifar, but pretty great. Gleaming Geardrake, also pretty great. This one is really... I was going to say it's really a build-around, but it's actually really good value by itself. A 2/2 flyer, even if you have no other investigating. That gave you a clue earlier. Yeah, that's great value, even alone, but we would need to have a significant amount of other just good blue and red spells to justify pushing towards a Geardrake deck instead of a Vannifar deck. I still think Vannifar is the most busted. Multicolored card we have. Yeah. Followed by Blood Spatter, followed by Geardrake. Those are probably the top 3. But they are all pretty good. So let's check out our individual colors now. In white, we don't have a lot. We've got some all-stars from draft, like Neighborhood Guardian. Super good when you draft a ton of Dogwalkers and inside sources and stuff. So the fact that we have 3 Dogwalkers is kind of nice towards that potential like Boros aggro sort of draft deck, because if you curve out with this and then play Inside Source on turn 3, you're getting +2/+2 that turn. Whenever you flip up a Dog Walker, you're getting +2/+2 wherever you need it that turn as well. This makes it so all your 2/2s are so much more likely to be able to attack right past your opponent's disguised 3-mana 2/2s. So you can get so much extra damage than it looks like. Like if you're in a position where, let's just say, for instance, your opponent has a 3/3 on the board, and you just have a bunch of 2/2s and disguised 2/2s. If you play a single creature with power 2 or less, it's not really like the Neighborhood Guardian helped you get 1 extra point of damage in by giving something +1/+1. It's kind of like it got 3 extra damage in, because in that scenario, you've buffed one of your 2/2s up to being a 3/3 to be able to actually attack into your opponent's 3/3, and they're not going to want to trade their 3/3 down to your 2/2, so you find 3 extra damage there. And even if they do want to take that trade, you're trading your smaller creature up. This card is just deceptively good in very combat-focused games, like Draft and Sealed are basically always going to be. So, big fan of this. That's my favorite card that we have in white. And we do have the Inside Source and the Dog Walkers to build around it a little bit to really get it to pop off. Now, everything else here is like fine. You know, there's some okay value cards like Night Watch, but there's nothing else super, super good to try to really build around or anything like that. So, yeah, white looks decent for that go wide kind of aggro deck, especially because we need to keep in mind that we have the triple Dog Walker towards that strategy. For blue, blue looks really empty in terms of the quantity of cards we have here. There are 8 total cards, multiple of which are cards I wouldn't really consider playable unless we have really specific combos with them. Behind the Mask, Jaded Analyst. These are just quite narrow, quite weak cards. Out Cold is pretty solid. Surveillance Monitor is pretty solid. Those are probably my 2 favorites here. And then Unauthorized Exits, Dramatic Accusation can be okay interaction. Reasonable Doubt, fine. Yeah, no big, exciting reasons to be in blue outside of our blue-green Mythic with the Vanifar. Moving on to black, we do have a pretty high quantity of cards here. We've got 2 Leering Onlookers, which I think are pretty good. 2 mana 1/3 flyer is not the greatest stat line, but once this ends up chump blocking or dying at any point, you get to exile it from your graveyard and get 2 more 1/1 flyers. So that is where it really kind of pays off there. There's some filler like Repeat Offender, Alley Assailant. These are kind of whatever. But Night Drinker Moroi, that's also a lot of damage in the sky. Basilica Stalker can be a lot of damage in the sky. Yeah, I mean, there's not a lot of super exciting cards here, but there are a lot of cards here, period. Something like, I think all these are perfectly solid playables at worst. And some of them are pretty exciting, like Case of the Stashed Skeleton, the Leering Onlooker, the Night Drinker Moroi. Black looks probably like our deepest color so far. If you don't count the multicolored stuff that we have to work with our white, definitely much deeper than our blue. Now for red, Goblin War Chief. These list cards, RIP this sealed pool. We only opened 6 rares, and 2 of the cards that we opened from the list is a collection of cards that aren't in the main set. So, you know, this reprint from Dominaria, and that reprint we had from some Zendikar, or not Zendikar, some Innistrad set. Yeah, our list reprints just don't work at all. Like, we're not building a Goblin deck. We're not building a Vampire deck. Those are not things you can do in the set in draft, let alone sealed. So yeah, red here looks fine. We have 1 incredible removal spell I really like, Torch the Witness. You do have to dump a bit of mana into this, but you basically always want to make sure you're dealing excess damage. Then this is a removal spell that also draws you a card, so excellent deal there. We've got a huge finisher with Incinerate the Guilty. We can build an incredibly wide board state with Person of Interest. So we have, like, these cards I would all consider to be very good, and then I think these are all solid, and then these are like, if we need to pump up those numbers to get red to make the cut, we can play these 3. And then this is just, we're never going to play this. It's a 3 mana 2/2 haste that's hard to cast. It requires double red. We're not playing a goblin deck. That's not something you can do in the set. So that's still 1, 2, 3, 4 really good cards. 1, 2, 3, 4 like solid filler cards, then 3 bad filler. Still kind of pumped about it. Red and black looking the best so far. Again, just because of how, like, not deep our blue is, sadly. As much as I like our Vannifar, there just are not blue cards in this sealed pool. That's all of them. Yeah, we'll check out the green. If green is massive, we could still go blue-green. But, I mean, green's good. I like all of these cards. Pick Your Poison is a little bit bold, in my opinion, to main deck, but, I mean, it is very good in the right position. Your opponent drops a 3 mana flyer on turn 3 or a 4 mana flyer on turn 4, something like that. You spend 1 mana to kill that and still have 2 or 3 mana up to do whatever you were going to do. Like, it's really efficient. It's not very good at killing artifacts in this format, because if they have a really good artifact on their board, often they'll have a clue token sitting there too. And they get to choose what they want to sacrifice. But if they play a really good flyer or enchantment, usually they're only going to have the one. So in the right matchup, it is very efficient, but there are still matchups where it does literally nothing, and that is a huge downside. You've essentially mulliganed if you have that in a game where your opponent isn't playing flyers or enchantments. This is a really quick combat trick. It's super cheap. Yeah, our green is just straight good. I mean, there's not a lot of cards here, but there's almost nothing I'd cut. The only thing is Pick Your Poison, and that's even a debatable card. Like, you can main deck it if you're more bold than me. But yeah, green looks super fine to me. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Only 9 playables, but this is a format with tons of hybrid flip costs, like the Crocodile here. So you do want to check out your morphs as well, your disguise cards, I should say. Although that's the only green disguise card we have. Any green disguise card that we have in multicolor would be a hybrid mana cost like this, where we could play it even if we're not playing its secondary color. But Crocodile is our only green disguise card, so it's a little awkward. We could splash in the Enlisted Worm. We can absolutely splash with our green. It'll be a little bit difficult to splash in something that needs 2 sources, so like trying to put 2 mountains into this deck and find both mountains to play our 1 mythic dragon on the splash could be difficult, but our blue's not particularly deep, so we could instead just like splash in the Vannifar off of a single island, our Evolving Wilds kind of land, our basic land cycler, or stuff like that, because Vannifar only needs 1 blue source instead of 2. So maybe like green-red splash the blue could be a decent place to go. Both red and black look pretty decent, so we could also just go for that red-black deck at the core and play our blood spatter analysis. Multiple ways to build this pool here. I think green-red splash blue and just straight up red-black are probably the places to be. Yeah, I imagine that's where it's at. I don't think we really want to do any splashing if we go red-black here, with only the 1 piece of fixing just being our 1 non-basic land. I really don't want to have to run the Case of the Shattered Pact. I suppose we can also take a look at our very aggressive streamlined Boros deck. That would be a deck using almost none of our really powerful rares, and it's just trying to outspeed everyone's power. Catch them off guard with a deck that's much more akin to the speed of your average draft deck than sealed deck. Just hit the ball rolling before our opponents do much of anything would be the game plan here. And it looks reasonable at it. So I will take a peek at this as well. So we'll look at Boros, Rakdos, and Gruul primarily. So we'll start with the Boros here, since I think it's the least likely for us to run this, because unless it's super, super streamlined, it is a little hard to justify leaving a majority of our powerful spells on the sideline here. I've actually got enough disguise cards. Mask Maker could be fine. Unicorn will definitely be great. War Chief will not. Dogwalkers are fantastic. Inside Source is fantastic here. Person of Interest is incredible. Shady Informant, not so much. Essence of Antiquity, not so much. Defenestrated Phantom, not so much. So cut 6 of these weakest cards we have. So definitely the case. And I guess we are really low on non-creature spells, so we do run this one random combat trick. Cut 5 of our creatures. War Chief number 1, that is the worst of them. We are really trying to get in underneath all the slower decks with this build, so we'll play the Scapegoat. Forum Familiar, it's a little grindier kind of card, returning one of your cards to your hand to replay it later in response to removal kind of thing. So it's like a 3-mana 2/2 that sits there waiting for the right time to bounce one of your own cards. It's not for like a super aggressive deck, I'd say, so we'll cut that, and then a 1/10, very similar card. We're going to play this as a 3-mana 2/2, and then we're trying to sit there and hold 3 mana up all game to save our stuff from removal. That's going to tax us any turn our opponent doesn't end up casting removal. Then I've just held that 3 mana up trying to get the hexproof for like nothing. I mean, I guess we get to untap the whole board too for surprise blocks, but we're probably outracing almost any sealed deck, so we don't really need to try to be on blocks that often. So yeah, I don't think Essence of Antiquity looks great here either. And then, well, I guess keep it simple. We're at 42 cards here. We just cut these last 2 cards I set aside. Again, these are just the slowest ones. A 3-mana 2/2 that takes a bunch of mana to flip later. For a deck this aggressive, probably not great. So it'd be 40 cards, no swamps in here, 17 lands, but that will help us get to our 6-mana bomb rare. That'll help us pay for our pretty hefty removal spell here, and we can dump that mana into a clue token here or there with the chases on. That actually might be our only investigate card, actually. But we could use Red Herring's ability. Yeah, I mean, we could maybe cut like a land for this deck. It is going to be the fastest build in the pool. But I certainly wouldn't want to go lower than 16, and I think the curve is still high enough to just go the traditional 17 lands here. Yeah. Super reasonable little aggro deck we've got working for us here. The one thing I'm not a huge fan of, we don't have a ton of ways to get hefty blockers out of the way from our opponents, so it's very possible for our opponents to stabilize. Well, I guess we do have enough. Combat tricks do count. So we can get our 2 power creatures to trade up into 4 toughness blockers, and then we can get them to beat 5 toughness blockers as well. So these are some ways to break through a really big defender from our opponents. Plus we have the 2 removal spells, and both of our removal spells are capable of dealing with larger creatures. One of them can only deal with larger creatures to make your move, but with this few non-creature spells, we don't really have the options to play better removal in these 2 cards. Not that Torch the Witness is bad, that card's incredible, but Make Your Move is a little bit narrow. You know, we prefer not to have to run that kind of card, but I mean, these are our only options, so we do run that kind of card. We'll make sure to take another peek at everything we aren't running here, but I'm fairly confident this is the best Boros build we have. Save maybe swapping a land for a Defenestrated Phantom. This is the only thing in red or white that we're not playing that might be okay. Yeah, the only things we'd be playing over land are pretty slow cards for an aggressive deck. Outside of maybe trying to play a face-down Witness and flipping that up, but that's still essentially dumping 5 mana into getting a 3/2 Flying Vigilance, which is generally a good deal, but again, not the quickest, most aggressive kind of card. So, you know, some off-color disguise card that would also be sort of slow because we could only play it off the disguise. Maybe just a 2-mana 2/1 over a land would be better than throwing in another disguise card. And it surveils to set up the draw. That's fine. I mean, maybe play that over this other off-color disguise card. Because this is always a 3-mana 2/2 that we then have to dump mana into flipping later every time also. But I do kind of like having a little more evasive threats. Now, I'm perfectly happy with this version of the deck. Despite how aggressive we are, I might still play an escape tunnel in here. For really aggressive decks, sometimes you don't want Evolving Wilds or Terramorphic Expanse because that land always hits the board tapped. So if you keep a 2-lander and then you draw into this as your land for turn 3, and you're stuck with these disguise cards in hand like Dogwalker that you can't afford anymore to play face down, it's a pretty big bummer. You have to play off curve and play it as a 2-drop instead. But there's also positions where you top deck this when you're flooded and finds your last couple points of damage. That is rarer, but it's possible. It's got the very cute trick of making one of your disguise creatures unblockable, then you attack and then flip the disguise creature. So surprise, it was actually 3 damage all along. I got an unblockable Dogwalker in, but I think that's not going to happen too often either. I don't know. I could take it or leave it here. I'm just going to call this the Boros build. I'm going to snap a picture of it so I can look at the decks side by side and see if this looks the most appealing to me. But I imagine we'll be going for something with a little more bomb power, unless our curves are just really bad and we end up running like a lot of filler. All right, here's all of our Rakdos cards now. So we get more non-creature spells in Rakdos, a little more options to choose from here for what to cut. It's got to be Cease and Desist there. Probably Reconstruction, it's a little bit slow. It's pretty good Graveyard Recursion though. What else do we have here? This is basically another creature. I don't know if I'd count that. And we've got just another mediocre combat trick. This is a very good combat trick on a suspected creature, because suspected creatures have menace, so you force them to double block, then you death touch away both of their creatures. But still not the greatest. Comparable to Felonious Rage in power level. They're both okay when you don't have a ton of other options, and we don't have a ton of other options, so I guess we'll try them both out here potentially. So let's cut the Vampire card and the Goblin card immediately. Let's move all the disguise things over to the 3-mana spot. Show off that that actually is pretty full here. It's 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm not that into the Mask Maker here. Defender seems like a pretty bad mana sink. Imagine we drop that. Still 3 cards to cut. Creature counts at 19. A couple creatures and a non-creature. Actually, Case of the Stashed Skeleton is another creature. So we just cut 3 creatures here. If we want. There's just so much mana. This Assailant thing. Probably our worst disguise card. Mortipede is almost never doing anything here. We're not collecting any evidence. We just have 2 cards in our deck that can return something from graveyard to hand. So there's only 2 ways for this to ever trigger. And those are Blood Spatter Analysis and Macabre Reconstruction. So that's just bad, I imagine. 1 more cut. Maybe 2 6-drops is a little too much. We cut the mediocre one with the Interrogators. I mean, a 5/6 is pretty big in this format against anything but green. A 5/6 completely stabilizes you on the ground. And you do draw a card off of it. We're just never killing anybody with the poison, obviously. So it's like a fine roadblock. I don't know if this is a deck that really wants a top-end roadblock, though. It's kind of similar to our Boros deck, but a little slower, more resilient to the long game. It's still not really focused on the late game, though, I think. Yeah, honestly, like, while we do get to play Incinerator of the Guilty, Blood Spatter Analysis, and Case of the Snatched Skeleton, while we do get to play more rares here for this build, I still feel like if we wanted to play this sort of pretty streamlined mana curve sort of deck, the Boros build is just better, despite having less rares, like less individually really powerful cards. The synergy is just better there. The deck is a little quicker to really make use of its aggressive curve. So I think if we wanted to do something like this, we just go for Boros. So it's going to be Boros competing with the potential splashy Gruul build. So we'll move on to that Gruul now. Worth mentioning here, while I'm building that Gruul deck, we actually could splash the Dog Walkers into the Rakdos deck, because you do almost always want to disguise the Dog Walker, then flip it up. It's still obviously better in the Boros deck, because if you have nothing else to play turn 2, and you are the aggro deck, you should just play this as a 3-1 Vigilance and get that ball rolling. But generally speaking, it's always fine to disguise this and flip it up. It's cheap enough to do so and enough impact on the board. So the Rakdos deck, imagine it was that build plus like 3 Dog Walkers instead of some of those slower disguise cards. Still do think our Boros deck was better, but forgot to put in the hybrid cards for the Rakdos build. And we'll put them in this time and then cut all the hybrid cards we don't care about in the end. I'm insta-cutting the Goblin War Chief, though. We're not even going to really mention that. I don't think I want to splash in Vannifar and Gear Drake. But I suppose I could. Yeah, imagine I'm just splashing in the Vannifar, just splash in one of the off-color cards without a ton of fixing available in the sealed pool. There's really not a lot of removal in this sealed pool either. White has 1 Make Your Move. Blue has 1 Dramatic Accusation. Black has somehow no removal in black. And then red has the 1 Torch the Witness. And green has just Pick Your Poison, which is super narrow removal. Yeah, we are really low on interaction in the sealed pool in general. At least we're low on hard removal. We've got a lot of combat tricks to try to interact with, and some bounce and stuff in blue. But yeah, if we go for the red-green deck, we have Torch the Witness and combat tricks. I don't think I run the Pick Your Poisons. Especially with 2 Vengeful Creepers, so the only thing Pick Your Poison would be doing for us is killing flyers, really. The Vengeful Creepers are a way better way to have main deck artifact and enchantment removal. So let's see what we're doing here. Let's put the Land Cycler at 2 mana. This deck doesn't seem like it really wants combat tricks all that much, which is pretty awkward. Scoundrel is so much to flip up that I don't love it much. Ferox is obviously great, Vannifar's great, Purse of Interest is great, Incinerator's great. Yeah, probably not putting in Shady Informant without black sources. This deck probably doesn't really care about Dog Walker without white sources. I think the Rakdos deck definitely would, but this is more of a just top end, just flip 5/5s and drop 6/6 flyers and take things over with a Vannifar or a 4/4 or something. It's much more of that than a like flip some cheap dogs up and try to buff them up kind of deck. Tipster looks decent in here. I guess there's only 3 disguise cards, but there's plenty to ramp into with the 2 tipsters. Probably not aggressive enough to care about the trackers too much, dealing damage when our opponent sacrifices any clues. It's also a little narrow. I kind of like the Automaton when we're doing a little 3-color spice here. And I think Mask Maker and Scapegoat are also pretty aggressive cards, as is Felonious Rage. As is Get a Leg Up and Fanatical Strength as well, but I think those are a little better. There's a lot of combat tricks. Combat tricks are just all the spells we have in green-red. All the non-creature spells, that is. Kind of awkward. I cannot cut all of these cards. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 cards to cut. I can only cut 8. I have to put 5 of these back in. I guess I could put 4 of these back in and play an 18th land. That looks fine for this deck. We've got 1, 2, 3 things to do for 6 mana. Panther's also 6 mana if we don't draw it early for the land cycling. This is 5 mana for the flip. Yeah, we've got enough high mana value stuff. We can cut, or we can put in just 4 cards instead of 5. And then put on land as the 5th addition here. I mean, I guess out of all these, the 3 dog walkers are the most appealing of all these creatures to me. They work with our tipsters, buffing them up. They do give us dogs to chump block with, which is very sad. It's a sad fate for these dogs, but they do that. I guess I only need to put in 1 more card now then, if I play an 18th land. But if I put in a couple more cards, I can cut 1 or 2 of these combat tricks too, which could be nice. I guess if I really badly want to cut the combat tricks, I could end up putting Pick Your Poisons back in instead of combat tricks. Can't imagine that's right. Yeah, I guess if I just play some 2 mana 2/2s, that buffs the combat tricks a little bit. And we can just have some stuff to trade with on blocks in the early game. And still plenty of top end here too. And then this, we've got combat tricks now, and we've got 5 2-drops here, so this could still be a 17 land version. Because I did put 5 cards back in here, so cut all these, and that's a full deck right there. We don't have to throw an 18th land in anymore. Still think it would be good for this deck, so I guess I can cut one of the tricks for land 18 here. Probably Fanatical Strength. I like the idea of this also investigating for us, and I like this being only 1 mana for the trick. So that leaves Fanatical Strength as the odd one out. This deck is almost entirely creatures, but I mean, what are you going to do? That's what we have in the color pair here in green-red. We have 1 removal spell and a bunch of creatures. Killer Among Us is also a creature. This is the idea behind this card is that you make a human, a merfolk, and a goblin. You secretly choose who the killer is. And then the idea is like you attack with all 3 of them next turn and your opponent doesn't know who the killer is. And then you reveal the killer and that one gets +3/+3 permanently with those +1/+1 counters, and it gets Death Touch. The way the card functionally plays out, though, is that you just get, you spend 5 mana, you get a 4/4 and 2 1/1s. Because you just choose secretly who the killer is, and then you only attack with that, because you don't want to chump attack with the 1/1s. So, like, they were very clearly trying to do a mind game sort of thing with this card. Just like, ooh, which one's secretly the one? But it's like, then your opponent only attacks with the 1. So it's like, oh, I guess it's that one. Does mean it's strong, though. 5 mana for a 4/4 and 2 1/1s is good. It's just a little less fun than I thought it would play out to be. Yeah, I imagine cut the Fanatical Strength for an 18th land, that land obviously being an island. Maybe go double island here. Let's see. 10-10 split on green-red, that's pretty simple. We could go even split and have double island, that seems fine. It's 4 ways to have the blue source. Seems reasonable for Vannifar. Yeah, I like this. Honestly, I think the decks are pretty comparable here. They're 2 pretty different directions. This is the powerhouse direction. We have an Axebane, Ferox, a Vannifar, and an Incinerator. Versus Boros just being the curve-out direction, where we just have Incinerator, but we've got a better curve. We've got more cards that synergize with Dog Walker to get extra damage to push in. See, I think either way would be good, but personally am a really big fan of Vannifar and Ferox. I think these are both tremendously good cards, so I'm going to lean towards this direction here, and I will call it a deck here. All right, here's a look at our final deck list for today. We're on a green-red deck, splashing a little bit of blue for the super powerful Vannifar. Got a decent curve of creatures here with some 2-mana 2/2s, 2-mana 2/1s, and some mana dorks into just a bunch of 3-mana 2/2 face-down disguise cards. With that curve of creatures, we can leverage a couple different combat tricks for value, with Get a Leg Up and the Chase is On to trade up into opposing creatures. And then once we get to the higher mana values, we can flip up our disguise cards into some major beef, or we can just drop some actual major beef like Incinerator of the Guilty, a massive winged condition, the Ferox, 4/4 Death Touch, Haste Ward, and the Killer Among Us here, a 4/4 and 2 1/1s off the one card. Plenty of beefy stuff at the top of the curve here. The one thing that's a bit weak about this deck is that it's pretty low on interaction, but our entire sealed pool is quite low on interaction. I think our most interactive deck we had available was Boros, which is why it was the main deck really competing here for the Gruul deck, but I think the raw power is worth this build. If we went Boros, we would have been playing one more removal spell and one more combat trick, but that's it. That's as much more interactive as it gets really in this sealed pool, so hopefully we can make the most of some powerful rares as well as a decent synergistic deck idea in general, just a decent curve out with some good ramp to flip some beefy threats in general, even without rares. So yeah, we'll see how it all plays out for us as we head into the gameplay. Here we are for game 1 with our opponent on the play. We're not doing anything till turn 4. We're getting 2 2/2s at that point. Then we're getting a 4/4 if we hit a green source by them, but we have no green source naturally. It's not a great keep. I'm going to go for the mulligan here. Okay, this is better. Still stuck off of a color. It's actually a really important one with Dog Walker that needs double red. But we're starting turn 3 at the worst this time, and I don't think I can afford to mull down to 5 here. Okay. There's the red source when I got rid of the 2-drop. That's a little sad. I don't think I could afford to get rid of a Killer Among Us. Maybe I should have gotten rid of Dog Walker since that does need double red to be good. We are playing against Boros. Luckily no turn 2 play from them. Okay, face down card. Could be a Dog Walker, could be a lot of things. Ooh, we've got a turn 4 Axebane Ferox. That improves this hand a lot. It's gonna be really nice. And our opponent is nowhere near having enough evidence in their graveyard right now. They have to collect evidence 4 to target this at all, so they need 4 mana value in their graveyard. I guess that could just be trading one disguise card off. Plenty of disguise cards that are 4 mana or greater on the front side. The hand has become really aggressive now that we're playing a haste threat next turn and then a 4/4 and 2 1/1, so I don't think I really care to trade here. Neighborhood Guardian, phenomenal card. I did my whole spiel about that during deck building. We have found the second red for our Dog Walker. Still gonna go Ferox into Killer Among Us here. And I imagine it is worth just attacking both here, because I'm not gonna block particularly well with that Neighborhood Guardian on their board for the +1s. And I don't imagine they want to trade Neighborhood Guardian into our face down. Now they could have their face down be a Dog Walker here where they can flip it and get +2/+2 out of nowhere. But if they do that, I imagine they want to trade into Axebane Ferox here rather than eat our 2/2 for free. But they could do either, and luckily they don't have Dog Walker as a face down. That would have been a really good combo there. Then they have a 4/4 blocker. So lucky they didn't have that, because either way they blocked would have been good if this was a Dog Walker. Cornered Crook. They do not have an artifact to sacrifice to that. Imagine that is planning on just trading for Ferox, which isn't great for us, but it's not horrible. It's only triggers on enter the battlefield, right? Yeah, it's not going to get any attack triggers or anything. Yeah, you know what? I don't think I want to attack here. I'll go Merfolk here for the killer. Pass. Defenestrated Phantom is their face down. They're going to start beating us down in the sky. We're down to 10 life here with no way to block that. It is a problem. We've got decent attacks of our own, and they are at 14 right now. They kind of have to kill one of our 4/4s here. If I just send in the whole board. I don't have triple red. I can't play Person of Interest and flip my Dog Walker. That would be the best scenario here. I think I still attack with the entire board at this point. I mean, taking 4 a turn in the sky, and I'll have enough blockers to chomp everything on the ground regardless. We have to outrace this flyer here. Yeah, we need to get in. I guess the Killer Among Us is actually going to have the mind game going in our favor here. Because they have to consider the fact that any of these 1/1s could eat their neighborhood guardian without dying. So they don't get a free block here at all this turn. So they are going to go for the trades instead. Yeah, we kind of have to flip the Dog Walker, I think, before it dies, and then play Tipster this turn. So play 3 1/1s this turn instead of 2 2/2s. It's a little weaker, but it guarantees we get as much action as possible out of all of our cards. I think it's worth it. I have to still choose the target? Oh my god. I'm gonna forget on this at some point. I'm pretty sure I chose Merfolk, right? Yeah. They could shock the Merfolk. I was gonna say that'd be pretty decent for them if they did have the shock there. It wouldn't be the complete end of the world for us. It would be a bummer, but it would still mean that they spend 1 shock on 1/3 of our Killer Among Us. More like half of it. I mean, the 4/4 is much better than the 2 1/1s. All right. Trying to outrace them here. We've got a wide board state and they're at 8, but they still have 4 cards in hand. Uh-oh. What on earth is this? It's the +3/+0 first strike. They just have 2 copies of that here. No, +1/+1 counter. Now we're dead in only 2 hits in the sky. Plus a lightning helix to put them to 11. Plus a shock? Jesus, okay. I mean, you get me, I guess. Yeah, pretty phenomenal collection of cards there. I mean, what can you do? 0-1 it is, and that is halfway towards being completely out of the event. We only get 2 losses in these qualifier play-in events. I'm just going to run it back. I think our deck played out pretty well. I mean, that curve was impressive. We got tons of stats there. They just had a really nice collection of burn in the end there. Alright, I do think we're going to have to mulligan again. Unfortunately, the mana base really not working for us. I mean, we're on a 9-9 split of our main colors, so we're opening just as many mono-colored hands as we would, statistically speaking, with the Boros build, so it's just bad RNG, not necessarily terrible mana. Yeah, we have 8 mountains, 8 forests, and a terramorphic. Do I still keep this, though, here? Because I have half the mana towards Incinerator, and I have 2-drop into 3-drop. I only need 1 green source by turn 5 to do something else. I actually kind of want to keep this. There's the 1 green source to get to the Killer Among Us. Dogwalker is actually way better than Crocodile for this hand, because it is already flippable. And we can flip it on turn 4. Crocodile isn't going to get flipped till 5 mana, in which case I probably would rather just cast Killer Among Us anyway. Perfectly happy to trade a 2/2 into any face down. Here's a Dogwalker. Mono green from our opponent so far. Probably don't trade here. A lot of green's disguise cards are like good value flips. Like this could be the 2/2 that gives them a land. So it's like literally just a 2/2. Yeah, I don't think we want to trade Dogwalker until it has flipped. I'll flip if they block here. If they don't, I'll just play another Dogwalker. Cool. Here's another one. There's a 1/1 now. Gives them a +1/+1 counter from the grave so they can buff a 2/2 up to a 3/3 to stop all of our 2/2s. The chase is on. No, it's not, because I'm going to play a Killer Among Us. Well, I guess I could flip a Dogwalker and have the chases on up here. I don't need to, though. That's already just good for me. I'm just killing a 1/1. Alright. There is a Killer Among Us. And it is the Merfolk. Hopefully nobody watching these videos ever plays against me, because I just always choose the Merfolk. Because I feel like if I choose the Goblin is the one that looks like the obvious killer. And the human is like the mind game one, of like the human looks so innocent. And it's like, this is the innocent one, so this is the one that you would choose if you were trying to disguise the killer, whereas the Merfolk's just in between. So I just always choose that in between there. It's like I'm showing up to rock, paper, scissors with just the t-shirt that just says, I always pick paper. Well, our opponent did finally find their second color of mana. They now have 3 forests and a mountain, so they are in the think tank here. They've got way more options than they had last turn, I imagine. And they need to make the best defensive plays possible, or they are going to be quite dead. Uh-oh. I think this is my... Okay, this is Arena messing up, actually. The hourglass went all the way to the bottom, and then it didn't start the next rope. When it does that, it's because you have disconnected from Arena. I really, really wish this game just added a little red disconnect symbol or something that pops up in the top right to tell you exactly when you are disconnected. What is happening? What? That game is just gone? We were like 90% to win that game, and it went to the Aether. It wasn't that we disconnected from the game. Magic Arena completely disconnected from that match. Well, that's a bummer. We are... hypothetically, like, we're 0.9-1 right now. That was almost definitely a win. At that point, with our opponent stumbles on mana, that is really disappointing. Okay, well, Magic Arena has decided we do not get that probable victory, and we are heading into Game 3, which is a bummer. This hand doesn't need this much mana, but my deck does. On average, I think I still ditch a land this early in the game. Well, that looks bad now that we drew a Crocodile. Because that was the second green to flip that up. Well, I guess we've got green and blue. But this is a 5 mana play. This is significantly more expensive than everything else we had in hand. It's not a super beatable card. To the point where I might have to torch it without investigating. Which is sad. If I wait just one more turn, I get to investigate when I torch it. And it investigates if they have more... If I have more cards in hand than them. So if I just play just one more card here, we're tied, and they don't investigate. So we'll do that, pass the turn. They don't investigate, and now I can torch it this turn and get the clue, which is a big deal. We just got to take one hit from it. But yeah, I mean, this is a must kill. It's a 2/4 flying vigilance, which is already great. And it's potentially drawing them multiple cards over time. Yeah. I don't really care if the tracker trades into a face down 2/2. So if it trades into a face down 2/2, cool. If I get to combat trick the Wojak Investigator, even better. And if they don't block, that's free damage. Okay, so we'll trade 2/2 for Disguise. It was a 4/3 flyer, all right. Solid. And let's get our clue token and kill the Investigator. There's another face down. That's 5 mana here. I can sack the clue and play my face down. Let's play the face down, so I'm holding up get a leg up for +2/+2, so even if they block with their whole board, I can just combat trick to win this fight, and if I don't want to, then I can sack a clue. Okay, I do think I'd like to combat trick against their disguise card. Keep my dog walker around. This seems fine. The one thing I kind of don't like about this is I am not cracking the clues, so I'm less likely to hit land 6 immediately. Alright, it's just the dog walkers, so they're making sure they get their dogs first. They got a public thoroughfare, so they got a little more fixing than we did. Oh, we are lucky. We find land 6. So I don't actually think I want to just play Incinerator right now. Kind of want to attack both and flip whatever they try to kill here. I mean, I guess if they try to kill Dogwalker, it's going to die anyway, but if they try to kill Crocodile, I can flip it when that combat. They're a black-white deck. That's what makes me not want to just play my dragon. I want to get to a point where I've flipped my Crocodile and get them to try to use removal on Crocodile. And then after they've used removal on Crocodile, we've pulled the removal out of their hand, and they can't use it on Incinerator of the Guilty. As such, now they can't murder the Incinerator. I'm going to keep this in hand because they could have a second Unscrupulous Agent, and if our Incinerator gets Unscrupulous Agented, that is the end of the world. Genuinely. It's 2012 all over again. Uh-oh, did they return 2 creatures from grave to hand thing? Would be pretty good here. The card's actually probably pretty decent in sealed. It's not been great in draft, but there's a lot more time generally in sealed positions like this, where we're poking each other for like 2 a turn. And if they get to return 2 creatures from grave to hand, that's kind of like a winning position. Ooh, that one's just straight damage, right? Oh yeah, that puts me all the way down to 8, and they investigate? Well, that was very good too. Okay, well, I mean, they only have 3 damage on the board here. I can't play around the active treason in this set, because if they have the active treason, I'm gonna die to my own dragon regardless, so I might as well poke in for 2. Active treasons are effects that temporarily steal an opposing creature. So steal it for 1 turn, you hit your opponent with it, and then you give it back. Oh, they still had removal, and now we're just outie. That is a 1/1, which is very bad right now. Still got double red if I crack the clue for double red, so I'll do that. That's unblockability, I guess. Keep it for now. I don't really want to flip the dog walker yet, because it can eat their 1/1s without dying. But now we're in a top deck war behind a card. Really behind 2, because it's an extra land at this point. It's not looking great. I think we played it out about as best we could so far. And then they just have deal 5 to my face? Cool. Alright, well, pretty big bummer of a run. I think... I don't know. I don't think there was anything we could do gameplay-wise. I think we played our games out to the best of our ability. I mean, we took defensive lines to try to pull out removal early before we dropped the bomb. That worked well. We pulled out the removal early. They just still had more removal to get there. It's about all we could do that game. We would have won game 2, so I should be getting 1,000 gems right now, but Arena's being a jerk today, so we only get 500 gems. So that is insult to injury that Arena just deleted our winning game from this run. And our first loss was a pretty close one. I mean, our deck was popping off. I think it was doing as good as the best hands of our Boros deck would have done. We had Ferox into the Killer Among Us thing. They just had a flyer and 6 damage worth of burn among 3 different spells in their hand. They had, I was at 10 life, they send in the flyer, they have the +1/+1 counter, the deal 3 burn, and the deal 2 burn. So, what are you going to do? You cannot win it all. I thought we ended up with a really solid build out of what was a bit of a weaker sealed pool again. Only 6 rares, no removal really. I mean, there's some removal, but not as much as you want. Yeah, I think we found probably the strongest builds that this sealed pool was capable of, either the Boros build or this one. Played it out to the best of our ability. Didn't draw particularly terribly or anything. Just got outclassed with the right stuff at the right time. Happens, that is Magic, baby. So 0-2. It's gonna be functionally 1-2, but we don't get the 1-2 prizes. That I am going to be a little salty about, but it is what it is. Sometimes you get those 7-0s, sometimes every now and then you are going to get an 0-2, especially in sealed, but in any kind of Magic, really, there are ebbs and flows. But that is going to end today's video. As always, I'd like to thank my patrons and YouTube members for supporting the channel, as well as you for watching the video. If you enjoyed this video and are interested in seeing some more, you can always like, comment, and subscribe to tell the YouTube algorithm to send you some more in your recommended feed. If you'd like to catch me live, you can check out the Twitch channel in the link in the description below. And if you'd like to support the channel directly, you can check out the Patreon link in the description below. Other than that, as always, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you again soon for some more Magic Arena.